Welcome to the Money Mile podcast. I am your host, Justin Waller, and I am happy you are here. We like to think of Money Mile as standing at the corner of triathlon and personal finance. We believe that age group triathletes are the lifeblood of our sport, and we want to shine the light on some good people doing great things in our sport. Today, we are joined by Coach Kat. Kat is a 5-time Boston Marathon qualifier, Ironman World Championships qualifier, 4-time Ironman 70.3 World Championships qualifier, Ironman All-World Athlete, a member of Team USA, 2-time Standard Distance World Championships qualifier, multiple times Olympic Distance Nationals qualifier, all of this including second place age group at Gulf Coast 70.3, 2 years in a row. Whew, a lot of athletic accomplishments there. Coach Kat, welcome to Money Mile.
Hello, Justin. Pleasure to be here.
Coach Kat, if we are doing this correctly, our listeners are out there somewhere on a long run. So we'll put all of the links that we talk about in the show notes so our listeners can catch up and connect with you when we're done with all of this. And don't forget to stick around at the end of our interview with Coach Kat for our questions on course segment at the end of the show, where we talk through some common questions I get as a financial planner and help you build your financial fitness while you're taking care of your physical fitness. But before we get to that, let's dig in with Coach Kat. Coach Kat, I know there was a great article that was written about you back in June of 2022 on Triathlete Magazine that kind of tells the whole story of how you got started in triathlon. From my perspective, just to summarize it briefly, sounds like you were in a very difficult marriage situation and found the strength through running and triathlon that you needed to leave an abusive situation. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. It's a long story. It's a pretty much 20-year-old story. I came in a sport of triathlon with no swim, bike, run background, and I discovered triathlon with my best friend, who is no longer with us. Through an unexpected twist, I had to move to a different state following now my ex-husband. In that new place, I went to just a local gym and was waiting in line for my trial class. And a woman came up to me with a big smile, introduced herself. Her name was Amy. And that was the beginning of a wonderful friendship. And that woman pretty much changed my life forever. And I wouldn't be where I am now without that angel. She's my why. She's why I'm in the sport. She's why I am helping others now. And every time I race, I write on my forearm, Amy, with AM as a little M dot, because she never got to do her 70.3. We trained together for a 70.3, and we were supposed to race. We picked different races so that each of us could go and cheer for each other. So we did the training together, and then she picked a 70.3 in Augusta, and I picked 70.3 in a month later in North Carolina, and we were supposed to go and cheer for each other. She went to the course. We did all the training together. She was so ready. That weekend, I was flying a day later to cheer for her, and I got a call saying, "Don't get on the plane, Kat." And I was like, "No, why? Amy, why? You would show up when nobody else would. It doesn't matter the weather. It doesn't matter the conditions." She was the rock that would always be there. She was never late. I've never met a person in my life who would never, ever be late. So I knew something was very, very wrong. She said she went to urgent care and she was told not to race. So a few months later, lots of medical tests, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, pancreatic cancer, and she passed. But she convinced me to do my race. I didn't feel like I deserved it. I didn't feel like I should have. And she convinced me that I really should. It happened that my race fell on the first day of her chemo treatment. So every mile, I would look at my forearm and I would be just so grateful that I had the body and I had the mind and I could do this amazing thing.
That is a touching story. I'm very sorry to hear that Amy is no longer with us. I understand that you also have a very touching homage to Amy on your kits when you race. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. This year, I actually, for the first time, for my small but mighty CKTri Team, lots of people asked me for the kit, and I was like, why not? So we created this CKTri kit, and it has angel wings on the back, and it has a saying, "I can do hard things," which is something that Amy would always say. She was lifting people up. Even if you didn't believe you could, she would be the one that will tell you, yes, you can. It's very inspiring, and it's always a good reminder for me and for my athletes that, hey, we are doing hard things.
It sounds like Amy was a really special person. Sorry that she's no longer with us, but I'm really glad that you had the opportunity to meet her. And through all the challenges that you went through, sounds like the opportunity that you had to meet Amy and the friendship that fostered over time has certainly been a benefit to you and will continue to be throughout your life. I'm sorry that she's not able to join you on all of these adventures that you're going on now. But in a way, you're bringing her along with you. You're going to continue to remember her through the work that you're doing. So I think that's great. And, if we look at the positive side of that, Amy obviously had a huge impact on your life, and you get to pay that forward to others, which I think is fantastic.
Absolutely. Yes, every day.
You mentioned the CKTri team. Can you tell us a little bit more about the coaching work that you do and the team that you're running there?
It's actually interesting. Coaching was not on my radar at all until I met Chris, who became my best friend and partner. He was not athletic at all, had actually some health issues, had a back surgery, had a heart surgery. He had tried running in the past, but was never successful, kept getting injured. So I started helping him and said, yes, of course you can run a mile. I'll show you how. I couldn't run a mile at some point. I thought that was a crazy thing. 5K, like who would do that? I started coaching him to eventually we worked our way up to a mile and then a 5K and then a 10K and then a half marathon, which was completely unbelievable, something he never saw himself doing. So that was very inspiring. And just like Amy would ask me after each milestone, Kat, what's next? This is the question I'm asking all my athletes. So what's next? So natural progression was marathon. So I started coaching him to a marathon. At that point, I had a few marathons under my belt. So I kind of knew what I was doing. Started coaching him to the marathon. He had an amazing race. He came like almost half an hour under his estimated predicted time. Felt great. Everything was just amazing. I volunteered at the race and I got to put medal on his neck after at the finish line. So that was one of the proudest moments of my life. We were so happy. After the marathon, the natural progression was triathlon. So we signed him up for a spring triathlon. So he got the running part done. Bike was pretty easy to pick up. Swimming was the struggle. He knew how to not drown, but he did not know how to swim. So we hired a swim coach. He worked with a swim coach for a few months. And after a few months, I checked because we had this little sprint coming up and he still couldn't do 25 yards. So we had to come up with plan B. So he was still panicking in the water. He was still not comfortable. He could not make forward progress. So we had to come up with plan B. We did the relay instead. So I was the swimmer, he did the bike, and his son did the run. So we had a blast. So he knew he wanted to do another try. And I said, you know what? I am an adult. I had no swim, bike, run background when I came into the sport. I could not swim. Could not put my face in the water, period. Like I didn't learn how to swim until I was well into my mid-30s, probably close to 40. So I started going with him to the pool. I would jump in the water. I would not be like a normal swim coach and walking along the deck, giving instructions. I was with him in the water. We started blowing bubbles and doing the little star and doing the little ball in the water. Fast forward 6 months, he did his first triathlon and it was a 70.3 Chattanooga. So that was pretty amazing. Around that same time, I was being coached by a different coach. I was training for a marathon. I wanted to get a Boston qualifier. I wanted to take Chris to experience the Boston. Training was making very little sense to me, but I kind of was rolling along. Okay, it's on my calendar. It's on my training pics. You know how we are, triathletes. We gotta get it done. Get that check mark, get the green box. So I just rolled with it. I didn't really ask questions, and he wasn't big on communication. So I just did what was on my calendar. Completed the plan 100%. Go to race. Perfect weather, ideal conditions. And not only I did not get my Boston qualifier time, I was well over the Boston qualifier time. I was miserable. I walked the last 6 miles. And looking back, I was like, yeah, my longest run was 15 miles. Kat, you should know better. That's not okay. You cannot train for a marathon with that training. I was very frustrated with myself. I was very upset. It was a, investment. It was a flight and a hotel and all of that. After that finish, Chris said, hey, you coached me to the marathon. You coached me to triathlon. You know what you're doing. Why don't you trust yourself more? He kind of pushed me in that direction. So I fired my coach and I started coaching myself. I got certified along the way, and that just opened the doors to so many more learning opportunities. That was just a little crack, just to show me that I do not know a lot, that there is a lot more to know. So since that time, I pretty much never stopped educating myself. Every day I make a point to read an article or chapter in a book or something related to my craft. And it's just fascinating. There is just so much. I still don't know everything, but I know a lot more than what I knew a few years ago. I got very interested in female physiology, and I started paying attention and adapting my training to my menstrual cycle. The result was just phenomenal. Not something that I expected to happen at all. I probably trained for a little over a year, completely with syncing my cycle and my training. That year, I competed in Chattanooga full Ironman, and I placed first place. Never been on a podium before at any Ironman event. My very first Ironman was like 70s, 80s, somewhere in there. So I went from like 70th place to a first place. Something I had no idea. Even during the race, I had no clue where I was. At some point, I got an idea that I was somewhere at the top when an announcer said, Kateryna, you're going to Kona. I was like, I'm going to Kona? What? What are you talking about? But it was unexpected, but very awesome feeling to come in first place. Then I raced 70.3, and 70.3, I came in first place too. So that was a really good year. At the same time, I started applying that principle to my other athletes, giving them tips and explaining what was happening with their bodies and trying to tailor their workouts to where they were in their cycle. And one of my female athletes actually won a 70.3, first female overall, working with that physiology. So it just blew my mind. It's like, why nobody's talking about it? Why nobody's asking those questions? Why nobody's paying attention? None of my previous coaches ever asked me about it. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like you applying that initial methodology increased your athletic performance significantly. You're also able to share that with your athletes as well. And as I understand, you've also gone through additional certification and done additional research on your own, so you can better understand that and implement that better with your athletes. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. So I got a little bit, I was an experiment of one initially. I didn't know what exactly I was doing, but I saw improvements in myself. I was like, let me try it with other people, and they see improvement. And now I'm in a perimenopause stage, so I cover that life stage as well. So, and there are a lot of women that come to me just frustrated because what they used to do and it used to work for them no longer works because our bodies are not the same anymore. That's another fascinating area that's still not as many conversations are happening about it, but the information is getting out, so it's getting better.
That is good to hear. I'm going to guess that roughly half of our audience that might be running along on their long, steady run and perhaps cringing. And here I'm talking about the dudes, the guy are like, oh, wait, hey, they're talking about a menstrual cycle and triathlon training. And those guys are probably cringing. But I would definitely encourage all of the guys out there, if there are women in your life that you love that are going through cycles like this, I think it's important for us to better understand what's going on with their worlds. It's a whole new level of complexity that honestly, as guys, it's hard for us to comprehend, but I would encourage you to lean in on it and try to have a better understanding of what's happening, because you'll be able to better support the people that you care about, and maybe you might be able to help them experience that better. So Coach Kat, I was hoping you might be able to just share with us maybe a couple of tips or maybe some examples of how life is different As you've transitioned into a perimenopausal state, maybe you could share with us a couple of the differences there, just maybe some things that we might be able to look out for or ways that we can better support the women in our lives that we love.
From the guy's perspective,
From the guy's perspective.
let your female partner or wife have the temperature in the house lower. Don't fight it. That would be my advice.
Okay, so temperature control in the house, that's number one. Okay, good. Anything else?
Nutrition is a huge part. What we are putting in our bodies affect us at so many levels. It's a whole different topic, but things like caffeine and alcohol and processed foods and all of that, they are beginning to affect you a lot more than when you were in your 30s.
I know nutrition is sometimes referred to as the fourth discipline in triathlon, just because it is such a complex aspect depending upon what levels you're racing and what you're doing there. And then throwing on top of that, this whole hormonal shift in your world, it seems like it absolutely makes sense for you to be talking with knowledgeable experts in the field. That if you're experiencing this shift in your lifestyle, it makes sense to be recruiting experts and have a team around you that can help better support that.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. That is one of the reasons I actually got certified as a sports nutritionist. Because again, that was something that was missing in my own training. My very first Ironman, I was probably the best shape in my life. But I had the horrible, horrible race because my nutrition was completely off. I was not heat acclimated. Nobody told me there is such a thing as you actually can help with that. My nutrition was completely off. I had no idea what I was taking, what my friends were taking. I didn't know how much I needed. So I made a point that when I coach people, I cannot just give them swim, bike, run workouts. It's a whole body approach. I'm looking at how many hours they sleep. They share their Garmin data, wellness data, and I do pay attention to it. And if I see, 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I'm going to reach out to you. Hey, I see their stress level. I know what's happening in their lives. You cannot just prepare a person with swim, bike, run workouts. I think, especially with women, you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at what they're putting in their bodies in terms of nutrition and fueling. You have to look at their stress levels and how much they sleep, how they recover. Again, perimenopausal, menopausal women, their recovery is going to be longer. Strength training starts playing a lot bigger role for this population. So all of my weekly schedule will include strength training, and Training Peaks just came out with that great update, for structured strength sessions. So I really enjoy using that.
I didn't realize that Training Peaks had that as well. So that's a recent feature they've added.
Yeah, it's been around a few months, but relatively recent. And they're great I'm one of their test coaches. So they will push updates and ask for feedback, and they actually listen. I suggest features, or, they probably have a pool of people that they talk with, but they actually listen, and I see them pushing those updates with some more features and updates.
That's fantastic. I think it's great that they're listening and actually making changes based on coach feedback. And your background is not just any coach. As I understand, you're also very knowledgeable about software engineering and the data analytics and all of that. So you've got a whole nother level of expertise to help support.
I love data.
Yeah, support all of that stuff. So that's fantastic. At this point in your life, you're looking at lots of different things. You're still a competitive athlete, you're coaching others. And I've found that success means different things to different people. I'm curious about how you define success these days.
I see my success through success for my athletes. These are my people. I care about every single one. Every single one is very unique and teaches me something new with everything they bring to the table. So when my athletes meet or often exceed their expectations, I feel like I'm successful, especially with women. When you ask a guy in a gym, hey, how much can you lift? Guys will overestimate. Girls will underestimate. So when I talk to my women and they tell me their goals, often they're a little lower than I think they're capable of. So I love pushing them and see what they can accomplish. It's very, very rewarding.
That's fantastic. We like to think of Money Mile as standing at the intersection of triathlon and personal finance. So what would you consider be the best investment that you've made in the form of time, energy, or money that you've made in your athletic career?
All of the above, time, energy, and money, education for me personally. I think just me diving into first getting certified and then learning everything I learned after that, that was a huge help for me personally. And now for to spread the knowledge and sharing everything I know with all of my people. Every week I have a note on the calendar for people with something like an article that just came out with some research paper or something that I learned. Sometimes it may be like, hey, post-workout snack recipe or something like that. So I try to not just be swim, bike, run coach, touch on everything. And I just get so fascinated and I can run out of the room. Chris, can you believe it? Hey, this is what's happening. I had no idea this is true. Or I love sharing what I know.
It sounds like that investment in education allows you're continuously investing in yourself and you're able to share that investment with your athletes. I think that's a great framework for moving forward. I'm kind of curious there. Has there been an investment that you've made that you thought was a significant waste of time, energy, or money? Something you would want other people to avoid?
It's not going to be a popular one, but social media comes to mind. Definitely time sucker. And we keep scrolling, and it's very smart algorithm that will make you scroll and click and buy you things that you didn't had no idea you needed just a few minutes ago. Everybody nowadays wants the instant gratification and a quick fix for everything. And I'm looking at the perimenopause and menopausal population, ladies. You can sell them anything, and often it's just they're desperate, and often those are just you know other
Yeah.
ways to deal with all of that than a pill in a bottle.
Yeah, I know that there's plenty of stuff that goes on for social media, on my social media feed that's like, why are they trying to sell me this stuff? It's obviously just, the sales pitches that are out there.
No,
So
I have very little presence myself, and even for my CKTri team, it's very, very limited social media presence. So if anybody needs to find me, it's not going to be the place.
well, it sounds like you might be onto something there. Social media, when it first started, it seemed like it had all this great promise for improving life and improving connections and all that. And now it's just, it seems like it's a whole lot of fancy ways for people to sell you stuff. So I can appreciate that as well. So looking at brighter things, one of the ways that you came into the process with Money Mile here is that you finished second in your age group at Gulf Coast 70.3 for the second year in a row. So congratulations on that. That's a tremendous accomplishment. In addition to all of your other athletic accomplishments. Can you tell us a little bit about how you trained for this race and how your experience was either during the race, on the race course? Just tell us a little bit about your experience.
It's such a fun race. Initially, I picked it because I had a lot of athletes racing Chattanooga 70.3, which is 1 week after the Gulf Coast race. I wanted to race myself, but I knew I could not just focus on myself if I were to do Chattanooga. So I picked Gulf Coast. I raced myself, and then I could be on course for my athletes to cheer and support for Chattanooga 70.3. The race is amazing. And I really don't understand why it's not more popular. It was, I believe, about 1,200 people last year, maybe 1,500 the year before, compared to Chattanooga, which was close to 3,000 people. But it is ocean swim, so it could be a little bit intimidating and challenging for some people. But I love it, even though I'm not a strong swimmer at all. But I love the challenge. I love that ocean swim. The bike is pretty flat and run is flat. The logistics are super easy. If you stay at the resort where the race is, you just walk to the start line, and you walk after you finish. You just walk straight into your room for shower. It makes it super easy. It's a really fun race, very well organized. It's been around for a long, long time, like 40 years, I think, like very, very long time. So they got it down very, very, like all the logistics are super smooth. And people who stay at the resort, it's so spectator friendly. You always have people cheering like the whole entire time for the run. You're not by yourself. Bike, you go out a little bit, so it's not as easy to see athletes. But for the run, it's 3 loops. You see people multiple times. I highly recommend it. I love it.
Oh, that sounds
great. And of course, I came in second 2 years in a row, and I'm already signed up for 2025.
Well, that sounds great. I'll have to add that to the ever-growing list of races I want to do. I'm sure my wife's going to be thrilled.
It is time for a quick form check. Money Mile is powered by Waller Financial Coaching, a full-time fiduciary financial planning firm. If you want to improve your financial form and improve your financial independence, You can get a copy of Financial Independence for Triathletes by texting Money Mile, one word, to 33777. You will also be added to the Money for the Long Run newsletter. Again, text Money Mile, one word, to 33777. Now let's check in on that running form. If you have your own form cues, please use those. If not, here are mine. Drop your shoulder blades into your back pockets. Bring your eyes up to the horizon and lean forward from the ankles for the rest of this episode of Money Mile.
So what would you consider to be the most underrated aspect of triathlons, or something you think triathletes should know more about?
Oh, absolutely. Transitions. I have it on my athlete's calendar as the other workout, and they practice, practice, practice. And again, personal story, I lost races in transition. I was faster in swim, bike, run, and I was slower in transitions. And my overall ranking, I missed out on my on my podium spot a few times. So I made it a point, and I do it myself religiously, and it's on my athlete's calendar. You don't even have to think. It has to be automatic. And those seconds matter. Those seconds do matter in transition. It will take you months and months and months to shave off a few seconds of your swim, a few watts on your bike, and a few seconds on your run. But in transition, you can be 30 seconds easy if you just practice, if you perfect that. I have people videotape and just review it and like, okay, why am I going up and down, squatting 3 times when I can do it in 1 time? Had to learn, to do the mount and dismount also with the clip-in shoes. That makes a difference. So
know what you're doing and how to do it. You don't want that to be your first time you jump on a bike.
There is a lot. And every single athlete after the race, they said it really helped. It really helped. Maybe at the time you don't think it's a worse investment of your time. I put 10, 15 minutes as another workout. They practice and they are always happy that they did.
I've always thought of transitions as one of those things that's really super important for like sprint and Olympic distance racers, folks who are real competitive at that space, where the transitions are typically a larger relative portion of the events. But you're pointing out that even at the 70.3 and iron distance races, when you're dealing with a more competitive field, seconds matter. And
I'll tell you what, I know a person who DNF'd a full Ironman, but the both transitions were over 20 minutes, like around 20 minutes. Like, this is a lot of time. That would have given you enough time to actually finish the race. So it will matter even in the longer races.
So that person didn't make the cutoff at the end of the race, but they had 20-minute transition times, and who knows where they could have been. Oh, wow. Correct. Yeah, that's obviously there's a lot going on there, but it's a great something to think about as you're out there training and you're putting hours in on the bike, you're putting hours in the pool and out running around.
Right.
A little bit of time. It doesn't have to be 10 hours a week on transitions, but a little bit of time to make sure that you're streamlining that and being efficient with your time. That absolutely makes sense that you would do that, at least at some level.
I put it closer to the race. It's not on their calendar, for 12 weeks, but, a couple weeks before the race, I will put it a couple times a week, and it pays off.
Oh, that's great. Was there ever a turning point for you in regards to your training? And if so, what did that turning point look like for you?
Well, my turning point was the start of my perimenopausal symptoms. What the heck is going on? And trying to figure out and trying to work with my body. So I had to adjust how I approach my training and what I do in my daily life, actually. Strength training is way more important now. An interesting story. One of the risk factors when women go through perimenopause, menopause is the bone density loss. It's, with estrogen going down, the risk goes up. Doctors would not do a DEXA scan, a bone density scan, until women are 62, I believe. This is when the insurance will cover it. So that's something that I had no idea, actually. But once I started learning about it, I was like, okay, let me check my bone density so that I have a baseline, so that, say, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, I have something to compare to. Because when you discover at 62, you have a problem, it's too late. There is not much you can do. I asked my doctor to do a scan. I got a pushback. You don't need it. You're doing all these Ironman things, and there is no need for you, and insurance wouldn't cover. I said, I'm going to pay out of pocket. How much is it? $300. okay, I can pay $300. It's nothing. $300, $400. It depends. I heard different amounts from other women when I shared my story. They went and they did their DEXA scan. But it came back that I have borderline osteoporosis. Everybody was like, how is this possible? You are exercising, your diet is good. What is happening? Looking back, actually, it was interesting when I started analyzing. When I was in Kona in 2023, I broke a finger and I kind of didn't think much about it. I was in a swim and we just collided with another swimmer. So I raced with with a splint, my two fingers attached. But when I got my DEXA result, I was like, oh, maybe that was a sign. I should not have broken a finger with just colliding with another swimmer. It was not, I didn't crash on a bike or anything like that. So getting my result now when I'm in my 40s, now I can do something about it. I started paying more attention to my nutrition. I make sure I get my vitamin D. I make sure I get my magnesium. I make sure I get my calcium intake. I'm monitoring it every day. I walk with a weighted vest. I have a dog that I walk with that needs a walk every day, of course. So I worked up to 20 pounds extra because the bones get stronger with the impact. So, the more weight you carry, the more stress gets on your bones. So the bones are going to get more bone turnover and get stronger. You can revert that. And again, after my DEXA scan, the doctor said, oh, now insurance will cover because you have the diagnosis. But I'm not going to wait 2 years. It takes about 9 months for the bone turnover. So I'm going to wait 9-10 months, maybe a year, and do my DEXA scan again and, see how it's improving. If I'm making changes, if I'm not making changes, I'm way more diligent with my plyometrics training now. Again, it is multi-directional force on your bones. That's what makes it stronger. So yeah, I can talk about perimenopause and menopause for hours.
Yeah, that's a great example of how all of those things change over time
and
the evolution.
And I shared my story with my athletes, and several of them went and they got their DEXA scan. A couple got a pushback from their doctors. Again, it's not covered by insurance. Why do you need it? You are active. There is no way you have bad bones. And one came back and she actually has, pretty significant damage. So she's also making changes. But it's just fascinating to see how the medical profession and how disconnected we are. The information is just not out there. People don't know.
I love that you're out there sharing this information and helping educate the public. As I understand it, you have actually written a couple of articles that are on Training Peaks, specifically about perimenopausal training and how all of this affects athletes.
Yes, there are a couple articles out there. I go over menstrual cycle training, basically what I was doing with myself and then with my athletes, and then showing giving some simple workouts that I would do. And then another article specifically on perimenopause and menopause. I have another article on contraception, actually, on different types of contraception, because often women working with male coaches and even women themselves, they have no idea how those things work in their body. When I was back in my 20s, I was put on a contraception and nobody told me what it was actually doing in my body. How is it working? How is it affecting me? Nobody talked about side effects or anything like that. A lot of women don't even realize that the bleeding that they may get is not actually a menstrual cycle when they're on a hormonal contraception. So it's just some educational material to help coaches talk to their athletes and actually have these conversations, because that's the step number one. You have to be able to talk about this.
Right. That's great. So if it's okay with you, I would like to link to those articles in the show notes.
Absolutely.
For those that are, really interested in figuring it out on their own, then great, they can start there. For those that might want to collaborate with an expert or a professional that knows that stuff, they'll obviously be able to connect with you. All of that's wonderful work that you're doing in the world there. So thank you for all of that. A couple of other questions. I know we're way over time here. I appreciate your flexibility. If you only had $100 to spend on any triathlon gear, what would you buy?
Buy some lights, reflective gear and lights. We are losing daylight. A lot of people start and finish their runs nowadays at least in North America, in the dark. And I see people running in dark clothes when I'm driving to park, for my run. And it takes one person distracted, half asleep, and can just do some significant damage there. So get something nice and bright and be safe out there.
What would you most like the world to know about you and your journey?
Don't be afraid to dream big, and don't be afraid to set goals. We always wait for that perfect moment when we graduate from college, and then when we start a family, get a job, and then kids are too little, and then kids are teens with a different set of problems. Then you look in the rearview mirror and like, hey, you have not done the thing that you wanted. So whatever it is, whatever you want to do, now is the time. Don't be afraid, especially women out there. Dream big, set big goals, realistic but big goals. I've seen so many women just underestimate and undervalue what they are able to achieve. But if you find the right community, if you find the right person to work with, if you find the support, you can achieve a lot.
Thanks again to Coach Kat for coming on the show. If you haven't heard of Coach Kat or read the article about her in Triathlete magazine, I highly recommend it. I enjoyed the conversation today, and I hope it was valuable for you to get some insights from a high-performing age group athlete and coach. We will also have her Training Peaks articles linked in the show notes as well, as they are a wealth of information. I would definitely recommend you check those out as well. And now on to the Questions on Course segment. This is more a response to a comment that I heard recently. I was talking with a fellow athlete, and we were talking about what we do for a living, and I mentioned that I work in retirement planning and tax planning. This person had shared that their comment or the response was, I'm never going to be able to retire. My initial thought was, well, not with that attitude, you won't. But I want to share with you a little bit more context behind that and what my thought process is there. First, I want to clarify, this is different from, I am doing what I love and I never want to retire. That's a totally different thing, and I absolutely appreciate that. I can empathize with that for sure. But I think the concept of never being able to retire and the baggage, the emotional baggage that comes with, is a bit of a two-phase problem that we might want to just dig into a little bit here. So I thought this was a good format to do it. The first part is that we need to recognize that retirement as a concept really only became a reality for folks within the last couple of generations. In previous generations, you essentially worked until you couldn't work anymore, and then you relied on your family or community until you passed away. A lot of people have not really been taught from a young age that retirement and financial independence is attainable. If this is something you are interested in and you have not been taught from a young age about how to create your own financial independence, well, kudos to you. You're in the right spot. So that's a lot of what we do here in our financial education work. The next phase of this, or the next level of this problem, is a lot of people hear stories that you need to have $10 million to retire or some outlandish number, and then they get discouraged. They look at their financial situation and they think, well, I'm never going to reach $10 million, and so they just give up. I am here to tell you that you don't necessarily need to have $10 million to live a financially independent lifestyle, and I would encourage you to continue to learn and educate yourself to find out what's right for you. Just because you don't have money like Elon Musk or Warren Buffett does not mean that you can't live a great life. So for many people that I work with, being aware of what their options are and how they can create their own financial independence is a game changer. Understanding how to put the pieces together to get a better result for themselves helps them live more confidently now and be on track for a better future. For this group, I would compare this to our awareness of triathlon. At some point in your life, you didn't know that triathlon was a thing, but you heard about it, you liked the idea, and decided to learn more about it and start working on it. You probably couldn't have done an Ironman on day 1 or day 20 of your training, but through diligent effort, you crossed some finish lines, you learned a lot, and you are likely a lot better off today compared to where you were when you started. In the finance world, there are some complex things, but that doesn't mean you can't either figure them out for yourself or work with a professional to help you. Many of us work with athletic coaches, and your finances are very similar. If you want to handle your own finances, you can, just like you can be a self-taught athlete or a self-coached athlete. If you want to work with a financial coach, a lot of the same benefits apply. Just like in our conversation with Coach Kat today, when she had worked with athletes to help them understand what they're capable of and help them do better, that is exactly what a good financial planner or financial coach will do with you. I encourage you to collaborate with experts in the field that are important to you, whether it be personal development, finance, athletics, whatever it might be. Work with experts that are in that field and can help you expedite your learnings and move forward faster. If you want to improve your finances and want to have the option, the potential of being financially independent someday, please continue to educate yourself at the very least and consider collaborating with a professional in the field. You never know what you're capable of until you try. I hope this segment and this episode of Money Mile has been valuable for you. If it was, please share this podcast with your training buddies and friends. Keep in mind that if you work out, everything else will too. And we look forward to talking with you next time on Money Mile.